Welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Kiriakou, and this is the podcast that aims to help people within the recruitment industry get 1% better after every single episode. We've had such a wide variety of different guests that come on the show that talk openly about their stories, about sharing value, tools, techniques, strategies, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all within the recruitment space. And every single episode, we like to have as much fun as possible with open conversation back and forth. It's not scripted, it's uncensored. And as I mentioned, I like to have fun doing this podcast because I know that if you're going to tune into this, you want to feel like you're part of a conversation whilst also leveling up your game within the recruitment space. So if you like this podcast, please do us all a favour. Comment, like, subscribe, follow on all the platforms. It really helps drive engagement for the show. And that's enough from me. Let's get into this week's episode, and I hope you enjoy. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. You came highly recommended to be on the show, and really excited to dive into the topics we have. So for people that may or may not know who you are and what you do, it'd be great to just know a little bit about that before we get cracking on the topics.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Charlie. I work as a fractional CFO and COO, predominantly with startups, scale-ups and SMEs, and certainly in the recruitment sector. So I previously worked in-house as a head of operations for a recruitment agency, and now do work with recruitment agencies as clients as well.
Love it. Cool. So for people tuning into this episode today, we've got a handful of topics that I think are going to merge in really nicely together. Yeah. And there's quite a few that I'm pretty keen to learn more about myself. But then there's quite a few that I would say I'm quite opinionated about. But what we're going to talk about is structure and systems, which I'm keen to learn more myself. Companies relying on 360 recruitment. I've been speaking to a lot of businesses recently that are pivoting more to the 180 model. And again, I've got my own opinions on that. Getting the tech stack right and getting salespeople engaged in CRM. Before we clicked record, I expressed my frustration to Charlie that the amount of recruitment agencies that I go in as an external coach, and they just don't have any notes in the system. They're not using the CRM. And I'm just sat there like, oh, God's sake, it's very annoying. We'll talk about when to start building out an ops department. So I've worked in businesses with zero operations, zero HR, external finance, etc. And I've also worked in businesses where they've almost immediately just built the ops department out. So it'll be really interesting to hear Charlie's take on that. And then finally, and again, all these topics will definitely merge into one another, companies that don't have KPIs. And again, before we actually clicked record on the podcast, I mentioned my analogy around why people should have KPIs, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. So why don't we just start on with the first topic then, Charlie? So you said to me one of the first things you wanted to talk about was structure and systems. I'll just pass the microphone over to you then and just tell us a little bit about kind of what you mean by that then.
Yeah, so I suppose all the topics merge slightly. So it's building out that structure so that recruiters can focus on recruiting. Obviously, if you're starting out, let's say previous top biller moved to set up their own agency, sort of very typical formula for a new recruitment agency starting. Quite often they'll have come from a bigger business with all of that structure in place. And so all of a sudden you're like, where do I start? What should I start putting in place? And certainly from an operational and finance perspective, number one is a CRM. You need to start having all of your data centralized somewhere. But then also things like recruitment is an industry with a lot of expenses, quite transactional. How can you start looking at bringing in things that enable you to focus on recruitment without having to worry about all of the admin side of running a business? All of a sudden you've gone from a business where it's set up and structured. You're starting your own business. The most important thing to focus on is new business and sales and growing that out. And there's loads of great tools out there that you need to start pulling in. But even stuff like phone systems, what are you using to track calls? It's sort of endless, and you could end up with a tech stack for tech stack's sake. I feel like I say that quite a lot to clients. Or nothing, and everything's on spreadsheets, docs, just floating around on some drive somewhere in the cloud. And it's sort of finding that middle ground early doors so that you've got enough systems in place to help track your everyday activity, but without going overboard and spending a load of money, and maybe replicating the tech stack of the big agency you were once in. And it's a really hard thing to do because you know your trade, you know your craft, you might be great at recruitment, but the business operational side is completely brand new. And I think it's at that point it's really key to just seek some advice, chat to other startups in a similar position and see what they did, and look to like get the structure in place but not go ham and end up with just like systems you never use or interact with, or that are completely distracting from new business.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I've worked with some businesses, Charlie, that are tech recruitment agencies and quote obsessed with tech themselves. And
Yeah,
as someone that's not necessarily an expert when it comes to the operational side, when it comes to the tech stack side, my expertise is the art of communication, business development, mindset. So
yeah,
when it comes to tech stack, I can give like my own personal experiences and things from other businesses, but I feel
yeah,
like sometimes it's almost common sense when you're looking at the spend that they have every month on 55 different tech stacks
yeah,
for a recruitment agency. And then you're like scratching your head, like, hang on a second, how much money are we spending on this? That's barely
yeah,
being used. Like, what,
yeah,
why are we doing that? Can we not just centralize everything on this? Can we not just get a
yeah.
tech stack that incorporates 5 different things in one? I think some agencies, they go way too far with AI automation and various different tech stacks. When, from my opinion and experience, I don't think you need to have that much, but I could be totally wrong.
No, I totally agree with you. And actually, I don't think that's just recruitment as a sector. I think that's
Mm.
like new businesses setting up as a whole. But certainly in recruitment, your main overhead should be and will always be your team. That
Yeah.
should be where the costs sit. Invest in good people that are going to help you grow the business, obviously.
Yeah.
But it is, I don't know, it's indicative of where we are just generally in 2025 that there's all of these tools available, and maybe you feel like, oh, I'm not using AI, oh, I don't have an expenses system, oh, I don't use this version of our CRM. I should be pulling it all in.
Mm.
And the truth is absolutely not. Go one at a time, make sure you use it, get the use out of it, prove that it works for your business, prove that it's potentially saving costs, and then see if you need something else. It's about focusing on growing the business initially, not growing out
Yeah.
all of your systems, so that, yeah, like you say, you've got,
Mm.
I don't know, 6 or 7 systems that are barely being used that look really good, were highly recommended, and maybe an agency double your size is like, yeah, you definitely need this.
Mm.
This really helps. Actually, go one at a time, keep it steady, because new business is so fragile, right? All of a sudden, you've got 5K a month of tech costs,
Mm.
and something drops off, you lose a client. You can't justify those costs continually in the business.
Mm. No, 100%. When it comes to the tech stack, then, so obviously you've got a lot of experience being fractional, COO, etc. Um, I'm I'm not sponsored yet by some of these tech companies, but I've seen
Okay.
some recently, and I've used some over the years that I really think are very powerful. I won't name
Yeah.
names specifically unless you want to, but personally, if I was to set up a recruitment agency now, I would want something in the early days to automate some emails. Only reason why is, and look, I'm not massive on automation when it comes to emails because I like
Okay.
personalizing stuff. The only reason why I
Yeah.
mention that is that if I was to set up a recruitment agency now and it was just myself in this room, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have the time to personally email thousands and thousands of contacts. So I'd want something that could automate my immediate outreach and then obviously go out and build relationships. I would also, if I was to start hiring people, I would want some analytics. I would want some sort of tech to
Yeah.
track. And again, we'll talk about KPIs in a minute, but to track things so that I could reverse engineer stuff. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the two things that you mentioned that are really important, and I don't think you'll be surprised by this, but I speak to a lot of solo founders and duo founders that don't have a CRM. And that's mental to me. And I think,
Yeah.
look, there's a lot of good ones out there. There are some really terrible ones out there. And then finally, as you mentioned as well, is like a VoIP or telephone system that you can just call through your laptop,
Yeah.
that can track the notes so that you can remove admin. Now that's a little rant from myself, but from
Yeah.
your expertise, if there's someone listening to this, either considering setting up a business or someone that is
Yeah.
fairly new to starting a recruitment agency, or maybe someone that is semi, like, they've been going for a few years, they're looking to like take it to the next level, but haven't
Yeah.
really invested properly in tech or a little bit don't really know. What would your kind of advice be for those people?
Yeah. So I think it's really important that you get something that can grow with you. So
Mm.
don't go too high too soon. Like, I think CRM is key. Like you say, you can centralize everything. quite often they have APIs that link into your email system. So you can be sending emails, it's all getting tracked internally in the CRM. I think that's really important, especially if you're growing out and starting to hire people. Retention can be patchy early doors. You don't, everyone's learning who's going to be right for their business as they go. It's going to be really key that you retain any data from people who might only work for you for a year or 6 months. So having something that links into your email system so that you own that correspondence directly with candidates and clients is going to be key. But yeah, if I think looking at CRMs, something that can grow with you, so that initially maybe you can have a couple of licenses that aren't extortionate. You don't need mass functionality, just some tracking, really key. But that you can see the potential for as the business grows, you can add in that bit more functionality, spend a bit more once you've reached a size that actually warrants it. We can name names. I think there's some more there's some more simplistic ones. I really like Job Adder. I think that's like it seems to cover everything you need it to, and it gives you the capability to add more as you go. I think that's really key. And potentially avoid the ones that make you sign up for like 24 months. Because you don't know where you're going to be in 24 months. Do you want a cost of £250 per head per month for a CRM? Probably not, dependent upon the size of your agency. So I mean, there's Bullhorn's a really popular, well-used CRM, and it does have a lot of functionality. It is a bit clunky. It is quite big. And there's some other quite cool ones that are popping up, like Recruit CRM. That's a bit of a smaller one, much more adaptable. Also, I do think something that just looks good, that's going to be easy to engage with. That sounds obvious, but that's really key. If your CRM just feels like something out of the 90s, that people like, recruit grads coming in are just like looking at it thinking, what on earth, where do I start? You want something that like the flow of work is smooth. Just to look at and engage with is obvious what you're doing, what needs filling out, what's being tracked here. I think they're the really key ones. And phone stuff, there's so many different ones, and quite often I think the CRM companies will recommend something that links well into their system. I think that's a great place to start. Look at the integrations of your current CRM. Who do they integrate with quickly? Change management is huge. It takes a lot to get buy-in. It takes a lot to get people engaged with what you're using and what you're doing. Find something that's plug and play, that fits into your CRM. Everyone can start using it. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I used Bullhorn for 6 years as a recruiter and as a billing manager, and 2 years as a global head of L&D. And sometimes it can be a bit slow, and as you mentioned, sometimes it's a little bit clunky. When they bought Cube 19 and integrated it, renamed it to analytics, as an L&D manager and as a coach, it's a dream really, because Cube 19 for me is like, I know OneUp has come up, pardon the pun almost, and OneUp is very good. The reason why I loved Cube so much, and when I first saw it, I never had KPIs before I moved into perm recruitment. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. So when I got introduced to it, you can imagine what a 23-year-old or 22-year-old's impression is of, here are your KPIs. This is what our expectations are. Pure anxiety, pure dread, pure, oh God, I'm going to get micromanaged, And then when they explained and they showed one of the senior consultants' KPIs, and obviously they were way higher, and showed they were all in green, and like all of a sudden I felt some surge of dopamine. I was like, oh, that's quite nice. 147% the target for my monthly interviews. That I want to do that. And they were like, basically, we've just mapped this out, and every single interview this person books, it's worth X. So if their target for the year is Y, all they need to do is do X amount of CVs, and then they get to Y. And I'm like, oh Christ, that's unbelievable. So when I became a manager, Cube 19 was the absolute, just the best thing possible. We used OneUp back in 2016, and I remember meeting Derry, who's the founder of OneUp, and I didn't realize he was the founder and CEO of the company. And he was just like, oh, have you used OneUp? I mean, not since 2016, but if I'm honest, it was dog shit. And I used North Star as well, and that was probably one of the worst bits of software I've ever used. What's your name? Sorry, I'm Charles. He went, I'm Derry. I'm CEO of OneUp. I was like, fantastic.
Oh God, just like digging a hole. Like, oh well, actually, back then I wasn't really, just
Do you know
like
what he said
filling.
though? And I was like, you know, I respect you. And I saw him at the exhibition in Birmingham, like the year after that. We shot some content together. And he went, I really respect your honesty. And he was like, back in 2016, you're absolutely right. It was shit. He was like, it's changed a lot now. And I was like,
Nice.
fair play. And I was like, I've almost made myself look like a total prat, but go on, explain to me. And then he explained kind of what they've done differently and the
Yeah,
functionality of it all and stuff. But a lot of stuff, like you said, I think one of your bits of advice there, Charlie, was that, you know, companies that try and sign you up for 24 months, it's just like if you're a new recruitment agency starting up,
yeah,
that's mental to me. That really is
yeah.
mental because that's a great example, right? So OneUp and Sourcebreaker, I think Sourcebreaker may have been bought by Bullhorn as well. Sourcebreaker, when I first used it, was a Boolean creator and a Boolean creator, and that was literally it. That's all it did.
That was their sole functionality.
Yeah, that's the sole functionality. So we went on
Okay.
there and then we put, like copy and pasted the job spec for a medical technology territory sales manager for London, and then it would create you
Yeah,
the Boolean. And I was awful at Booleans because I found them boring and I just didn't want to do them.
yeah,
So I just whack it into Sourcebreaker, happy days. But once you've kind of just like used it for a month and created all the Booleans for your ICP, you never need to use it ever again. But they
yeah.
changed when I was the head of L&D. Like this is like 7 years later. They came in and gave us a demo on the product. Absolutely different. Like it scrapes, or I don't know what it does now. I think it's incorporated in Bullhorn or something, but it just
Okay.
scraped the entire database, all of the job boards. It had integrations to like LinkedIn and everything like that, and it had a map. And it was like, wow, that's incredible. Like it's totally
Yeah.
different. So imagine signing up for those guys in 2016 for 2 years, and then like after a month, you've already got all your booleans. It's like a waste of money, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes because of perm fees in
Mm,
recruitment, because they're sizable, the cost is always offset and the decision making is off, like you look at that cost and you offset it really quickly and you're like, wow, 24 months of that's two perm fees. We've only got to do two perm placements and it covers it. But if you're making that justification once a month on a different tool or a different piece of tech, you've eaten up all your perm fees for like the
yeah,
next year. So it's really like it's good that recruitment has that space and those sizable sort of billings that you can
mm,
make those decisions and invest in good tools. But if you do that too much, you're in risky territory. And
mm,
yeah, you've signed up to three or four tools that you're committed to for 24 months that, like you say, you might use once a month, you might use for 6 months and never need again. So it is really key to understand what you actually need and what is the commitment and is it an
yeah,
essential commitment here.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The one when you say OneUp, I think that I've spoken to those guys a couple of times, and I looked
Mm.
to implement it in an agency I was at previously. But the word they kept using that also sort of made me feel a bit gross was gamify. They
Oh,
use
really?
gamify to really sell, like, this will help gamify it for your team. This
Mm.
will gamify it, and you're like, I don't know that that's what we're looking for here. Like, actually, I think we want to use it as like a bit more of a like evaluation piece. But yeah,
Mm.
it's just funny that that word floats around sometimes with like incentives and hitting targets.
Yeah. Do you think though that term for like a 20-odd-year-old recruiter, like if you were managing a sales team of like 20-year-old Gen Z recruiters that have got PlayStation signs in their office and whatnot, maybe that might incentivize them to want to get involved? What do you reckon?
But potentially, I think that it depends on how much they need to interact with it to get that
Yeah.
like dopamine hit back from the
Yeah. Yeah.
green. I think
Mm.
it's that bit because I think it needs to be more immediate gratification from it visually
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
the buy-in. So actually, if they're like, oh, it looks good, this is engaging, this is exciting, but they've got to be adding a load of information and staying really on top of it. Sometimes the two outweigh each other a little.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm massive on the like making recruitment fun for especially for the
Mhm.
younger recruiters and I haven't seen OneUp in about a year or something like that. I've always urged companies to get some sort of analytics software and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But just having something like I think on OneUp, what you can do is you can do like so say for example in recruitment businesses on a Friday, companies will do like a competition for the day, who can have the most client calls, who can book the most amount of meetings. I
Yeah.
think there's a functionality on the thing where you can do like a competition and it shows like the 15 recruiters.
Yeah.
And then every single time you do that, like there's like a leaderboard, and then I'll go above you, then you'll go above me and stuff. And if that like links in really well with the CRM, so every single time you like book a meeting through the system, and hopefully that can incentivize people to then actually use the CRM, which we'll talk a little bit about as well, then I
Yeah.
think there's a good purpose for it. But yeah, so what other, so we talked about CRM, phone system, analytics from an operational standpoint as well. Like, again, speaking about if there's someone looking to set up a business, or has a business looking
Yeah.
to scale,
Yeah.
one thing that pops up a lot on LinkedIn, Charlie, is like AI automation. And I think people are almost not, I don't want to say they're burnt out by the topic, because it's very important. And I think you and I both know that this is going to revolutionize the industry, it's going to
Sure.
revolutionize our lives. But I think people are getting like overwhelmed with so many AI automation tools. I'm quite curious to know you know what your thoughts are on it, and if there are any sort of AI automation tools that you have perhaps recommended to businesses, or worked on with businesses. Would just be keen to get your thoughts on that, really.
Yeah, so you're right, it is everywhere. And I think you know, the obvious one being ChatGPT. If you aren't
Yeah.
using that to support wording emails, creating your own content, I think even building out plans of like like, here's everything I've got for the week, help me build out a plan, things like that.
Mm.
It's almost like a free PA for everyone and
Yeah.
anyone to be able to use. I think you're mad if you're not at least utilizing something like that. The thing I've really noticed with AI is these bigger companies we've just talked about, the CRM businesses, the phone
Mm.
companies, they're pulling it in as part of their offering now. It's
Mm.
now an active part. So I did demo a CRM a few weeks ago, I won't name it, that's for recruitment. And a huge part of their functionality was AI, that it built in was learning your tone of voice to be able to help you create emails faster, to help you respond to
Nice.
CVs. It would help you revise CVs more quickly, get things
Mm.
updated for candidates. So I think it comes back to our initial point of choose a good CRM, or choose a good starting, like, jump
Yeah.
off point that will allow you to scale out with the business. So, and if it doesn't have an AI feature, it's probably not going to be a good long-term
Yeah.
solution. But I'd be really surprised if all of these companies aren't going to integrate it within some sort of manner over the next year. It would be
Mm.
mad if they didn't. Like, it, even like operational tools I use, like Monday.com, which is a really great way just to like plan out projects, get
Mm-hmm.
things structured throughout your team outside of your recruiters. Even that's got AI being pulled into it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a standalone feature, but it should definitely be part of your tech stack in some way.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, myself and two other quite known trainers are in the process of setting up a separate business. I can't go into too much detail about it,
Sure.
but one of the trainers was just like, right, what's going to be the major differentiator? Because there's a few things like this on the market. I think we need to incorporate AI. And me and the other trainer looked at him and went, right, okay, how are we going to do that? And then we started brainstorming it, and then we all came to the conclusion, similar to what you just said there. If we launch what we're thinking about launching, and it doesn't have an element of it that is artificial intelligence, it's just going to be left behind. So we're
Yeah.
meeting an engineer, I think, like next Wednesday, to talk about how to incorporate that. Meeting someone to build something that week as well. And it's just like it's you just have to, like recruitment
Yeah.
businesses, they have to look at how to incorporate it, but also the right way. Because you mentioned a second ago about helping to write content and plan out your days and stuff. Look, my big thing, and I want to hear your thoughts about how you potentially use ChatGPT as like a fractional ops
Mm.
person, etc. But I see a lot of recruiters go, like, they'll do a post like, if you're struggling in interviews, here's 5 tips, and it's like so blatantly ChatGPT with the super
Yeah.
long dash in there and the
Yeah.
emojis, and you're like, right,
Yeah.
okay. And then you just look through your whole LinkedIn, and recently, we're recording this start of July. Recently, I saw so many people post on LinkedIn. Why am I seeing posts from 2 to 3 weeks ago? What's going on? And people coming back saying, because apparently no one really knows the LinkedIn algorithm, but apparently the LinkedIn algorithm can sense that it is AI
Yeah.
generated, so that it's just binning that off and putting it to the bottom of the
Yeah.
barrel. And then anyone that's written anything controversial or just like human, it's kind of like pushing that up to the top. So
Yeah.
I've always said to people, just be a bit mindful when you are using these AI tools, so that we're still being human, which I know some people call me archaic for saying that, but we're in the human business at the end of the day. So yeah, I'd be quite keen to see maybe how you potentially use like chat gpt or different
Yeah.
AI tools.
I think it's really key it's an ideas tool. I think
Yeah.
if you think it's going to produce you a finished piece of work, whether it is a LinkedIn post, whether it's an email, and you're using it, you're copying and pasting, the Z's are still in there, the emojis are still in there, the super long dash is still in there. You're just not paying attention to what you're doing, you're being lazy.
Yeah.
The point is actually to use it as a jump off point, get some ideas from it. But I do think even where if I put into ChatGPT right now, give me 5 ideas for a post on hiring in X sector with this kind of candidate, it would give me 5 reasons why, 10 reasons why. Like you have to still interact with it and give it good
Yeah.
information. AI is only as good as the information you give it. That is really key. So I use it I operationally I use it to help with system setup and structure. Like it's really good at giving guides on how to do things and how to integrate tools. It's fantastic for that because I'm not then using that information and
Mm.
providing it to the rest of the world as if I'd written it. So I think it's important to understand, am I going to get something from ChatGPT or said AI tool that I'm going to publish to the world as mine? Or
Mm.
am I using it to give me ideas, inspiration, to speed up my day? And the answer should be the latter. Like you can't just use it and think like, oh great, that's a really good email going back to this candidate. If I'm a candidate that sends a thing, like I said, like American English in there, um, things haven't been replaced, it's clearly not tailored to me. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's a human business. We still have to be humans. We have to put our own touch on it, but use it to cut a few corners, to speed up your day, to help you get information into something that you wouldn't be able to do without doing an hour of research. Great. I'm here for it. But
Mm.
yeah, it's understanding the audience and what you're going to be using that for.
Just a quick one from me, guys. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. But as you probably know, the way that I fund this podcast is through my coaching business. So just a little bit of information around that, because you or someone that you might know might find some value in this. But I work with recruitment agencies, recruitment businesses within a range of 1 to 100 heads that are looking to scale, grow, and ultimately want to upskill both founder level, recruiter level, and everything in between. And I offer a wide variety of different services, from one-to-one coaching, group coaching, training academies, business development training, creating company handbooks, and I'm looking to do a lot more webinars, and I'm looking to add as much value as I possibly can. But in order for me to keep doing this podcast, I need to make a living, I need to pay my mortgage, and I can only do that through my coaching business. It's really difficult doing it by yourself, but I love doing it, and I add a lot of value to recruiters and recruitment businesses. So if that sounds like something that you'd potentially be interested in, if you're someone that's passionate about personal and professional development, my details are below in this podcast. That's enough from me. Let's get into the rest of this week's episode. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's such a time saver. Since doing this podcast, like if I did, like a lot of the time, the podcast episodes will come out a month or two after I've recorded, because I've got such a backlog of episodes. So by the time I post this episode, I wouldn't have forgotten everything, but I'm not going to remember that by minute 24 we changed topic to
Yeah.
this. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? So,
Yeah.
and then when I've got to write the newsletter, I remember the first few episodes of the newsletter, which is just like a roundup of the episodes and some quotes and what they said for the final question, etc. Like I had to go and rewatch the episodes and then pause it and then like
Yeah.
write down the quotes, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So now I get the audio file, whack that into Riverside, get the transcript, put that into ChatGPT, and said, right, here's my format for the newsletter. I need quotations about XYZ, and I need the answer to the final question, how to get 1% better in recruitment. Bosh goes, here you go, there's the episode with Charlie. And I'm like, brilliant.
Great.
And then I'll just obviously read through it, because sometimes it's just like
Of
AI,
course.
etc. But that's where
Yeah.
you can't be too lazy about it. And the same thing as well with being a solo like L&D, external L&D person, and a client says, oh, can you build us a presentation on candidate flips, reverse headhunting, or objection handling? And you're
Yeah.
like, right. And sometimes when I have to sit there by myself and brainstorm ideas for content, it drives me insane. And I have to wipe off all my goals and the podcast stuff on my whiteboard and go, right, where am I going with this? How am I going
Yeah.
to start this? What does it look like? And then I sit there for a whole hour trying to map out a presentation. Now I'll just go on to ChatGPT and I went, I want you to act as if you are an L&D consultant with 20 plus years experience in recruitment. I'm going to work with a legal recruitment firm and they want me to do this session.
Hmm.
Help me map out that. Then as soon as I completed the presentation, I put that into ChatGPT and I said, be honest, I want you to shred this apart and tell me what's really good and what's really bad, what I need to take away, etc. And then it's really honest and says, like, you know, this slide is too wordy. That doesn't really make enough sense. Recruiters might not understand that, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's just saved me so much time. And for recruiters
Yeah.
listening to this and founders listening to this, AI shouldn't have to replace the aspect of the job that you differentiate yourself to in terms of like speaking to people, meeting people. But all the
Hmm.
boring shit us recruiters don't like doing, use AI for that. That's the major thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as well, something that I've heard a couple of marketing agencies doing that can definitely be replicated within recruitment is building out a GPT. So on ChatGPT, there is the option to bespokely build one out. So say you win a client and you know you're going to be recruiting at least 5 roles for them over the next 6 months. Build a GPT, giving them all of your client information that's relevant for the roles that are going to come up.
Mm.
And it could really help you create content to be able to attract candidates. You can say these are all the things about the business. It's going to memorize the tone of voice that your client's looking for. You could even say these are the formats I'm going to need to have CVs in. So it's just like removing that admin piece.
Yeah.
You can really tailor it to specific clients. If you've got retained business with a client, I think doing that, spending 30, 40 minutes building out a GPT, giving it that information, laying that foundation, you can then really quickly say, right, now I need to reformat this CV for this client. It's going to put it in a format your client's going to want to see it in really quickly instead of
Yeah.
always having to manually do it. The time investment for something like that is almost like having an admin assistant.
Yeah, it's power. Before we switch a little bit, because like some of them will merge in quite nicely, you touched a little bit on getting salespeople engaged in the CRM,
Mm,
but only touched on it. I mentioned to you before we recorded that as an external coach, it's a bloody pet peeve. And maybe I might have a slight bit of PTSD from being threatened by my old sales director in a nice way. And it actually really helped me build the habit on using the CRM. Because again, I'm a stereotypical recruiter in respects that I really dislike admin. I find it very boring. My thing in recruitment was I want to be in front of people. I want to be on the phone. I want to be laughing, having fun. When you're
mm,
sat there with a bunch, and this is pre-note takers, and like you got a bunch of notes and you have to like put them on the front of bullhorn so that you don't have to trawl through
yeah.
thousands of notes. It's long. But I'm curious, as someone that goes into businesses and helps build their operation departments, etc. CRM is so huge. How do businesses get the salespeople actually engaged and invested to use it? Because it's so important. It's so hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the really quick response, and this isn't me being lazy, I think it's you've got to link your KPIs to it. I think you have to. So if you're um, judging performance or feeding back on performance based on KPIs, and you're getting that data from your CRM, if people are consistently not hitting those KPIs, but they're saying they are, and you're saying, well, here's the gap. It's because you're not putting it in the CRM. How am I meant to know that you're achieving this number of calls? How am I meant to know that your sales funnel looks like this if you're not putting it in? I think it just that has to be your pushback. Like,
Mm,
I'm going to feed back on your performance, reward your performance based on these KPIs, and I get this information from the CRM. You have no option. You
mm.
just it has to be almost that old school approach, I think.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mentioned briefly a second ago about my old sales director. When he came in, he was quite militant. Like he was actually the best manager I ever had. And I've
Mm,
mentioned him a few times on the pod. I probably should get him on because he's brilliant. But I remember when on Bullhorn, we used to add a note and it would be like candidate call and it would be like spoke to Charlie, and you got the notes. And he incorporated this new process on because we were quite good on the CRM, but we slacked a little bit. And
yeah.
he incorporated this new process within the business and said, basically on the front of the candidate page where you've got the CV to the right and then you've got like the candidate description. I want the candidate qualification with because we had templates for candidate qualification with all the key bits of info on the front page of that candidate. And if you qualify that candidate again a year's time and it's different, then just update the front page, because the rest
Yeah.
of the notes are called left voicemail, prepped for interview, interested in X
Yeah.
role. Like I don't want to go to page 40 to see what the notes are and what the MITs are and reasons for leaving, etc. So put that at the front.
Yeah.
And me being a cocky 24-year-old at the time who's just like, whatever, like I'm one of the top performers here. I had an offer from a candidate. And again, being the way I was like, yeah, candidate's going to accept, fucking brilliant. And he went, let me just see Charlie's profile on the CRM. Oh, okay, cool. There's no notes. I went, oh, actually, if you go, I did add notes. He went, oh, yeah, I see it's on page 7. What's the new process, mate? And I was like, yeah, mate, it's just so pointless. And he literally, in front of everyone, Charlie, was just like, okay, cool. So if that candidate accepts that offer and the deal goes through and we send out the invoice, I'm going to put 10% of the commission on my figures. And I was like, what? That's bollocks. No, why are you going to do that for? And he went, because you haven't followed the process. And he's like, just because you're a senior person in the business does not mean that you're
Yeah.
above the process. And he pulled me aside after and tried to explain. He's like, I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to make you look like an idiot. I'm just saying, I'm like, this process is going to help us as a business. You're a senior person. People look up to you. If you're not following that process, why is like little Jimmy and little Timmy going to follow that process? They're not.
Yeah.
So just do it, mate. And I was like, were you really going to take my commission? He was like, if you're not going to do it, then yeah. And I was like, all right. Literally, when I was in the meeting room, went on my laptop, changed the notes like that. And I went, there you go. And then any single time now that anyone didn't add notes to the system and you've booked an interview, it'd be like a red flag, or like you'd stand up and go like, Charlie, you've put an interview, but you've not even added a single note on the system. If that's not on by the end of the day, you won't get commission for that deal. And it's like no one ever actually had their commission taken away, but it was like
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It was just like, look,
Of course.
this is why we're doing it. It's important.
Yeah, I think the threat of commission loss will get salespeople to interact with the system.
Yeah.
It's not something I would immediately recommend. If you
Yeah.
can get people to interact with it first, great. But it is the stick, right? That like if the carrot hasn't worked, then maybe. But yeah, I think putting that in place as a parameter to say, well, actually, part of placement is that we're tracking this information, that we know this about our candidates, that we can get that information quickly. That's part of our process as a business. It's who we want to be as a recruitment agency. If you want the commission for working here and that placement, then you're going to need to do it. But yeah, it is clearly worked. It's clearly bored its way into your memory.
Yeah. And also because I was in that process where they were going to make me a sales manager, and they were saying like, look, you hit your KPIs and stuff. If you're a manager, it's not just, you have to do like real detailed inspections. So they trained me on how to like not just go, oh, well done, Charlie, you've got 5 interviews for the week, well done, you're green. It's actually going through every single interview as a manager and going, what's happened here, when was the last time you spoke to them, and doing real thorough inspections. Because a lot of the time recruiters will put an interview through the system, candidate don't turn up, or the client says, actually, we've had second thoughts, and then they've hit their KPI but it's never going to go anywhere, or maybe the candidate doesn't get the job, or doesn't get past first stage interview, and they just forget about that candidate when actually they could be relevant for other jobs, etc., etc.
Absolutely.
But something I wanted to mention and ask you about, and I saw this, someone was talking about this on LinkedIn about AI note takers, and they're everywhere, right? So I've got one on Zoom. I've got a premium Zoom account. Bit clunky, if I'm honest. I have to put it onto ChatGPT, and it's long. I'll be honest, it's not the greatest.
Okay.
Granola that was on Apple, it's now come to Microsoft. That's pretty good. I've been trying to utilize that. And there's been a French company that also has like a phone system that I spoke to this week that looks really, really cool. I don't know about you. I feel like if a company is using like a phone system with an AI note taker, surely that's like an easy way to be utilizing the CRM, right?
Absolutely. Especially if they're like interacting, there's an API built in for it. And actually the CRM I mentioned earlier that I demoed and had a look at, they have that built in as well. The only thing is, like, AI is fantastic, and I think in another year's time it's going to be even, it's going to be continual improvement. Like day by day it's getting better. You do, like you say, the one for this, you're like, it's missed some of it. I've actually got to then put it into another AI system and improve the notes. I do think you run the risk of consultants being lazy still, because they'll just trust the AI notes. And actually, if you read back through a transcript of a call, sometimes it's bizarre.
Yeah.
Like I use Gemini, I use the built-in one for Google because I'm on Gmail for everything. And I often have to go in and be like, okay, that is not what we were saying. That is a bit mad. This whole bit is just completely irrelevant, especially with my soft Somerset accent that sits under. I think sometimes it picks up the wrong words. So I think it's great. I think it does the bulk of the work for you, which is what we've already said AI is fantastic for. It can save you 30 minutes. But spend another 4 to 5 just correcting those notes, getting them right.
Yeah.
But into that habit, as soon as any of these things become habitual, great, you've got that process there in place.
Yeah. I always say to people, even if you do have the AI note tracker, if you're doing, so for me, my opinion is the two most important calls in recruitment are a job qualification and a candidate qualification. And everything else in the middle is not equally as important, very important. Every aspect is important, but those two calls are like the pinnacle of everything. For me, to make my life easier, I used to have a candidate qualification template note on Bullhorn. So it said most important things in bold, salary in bold, etc., etc., and then everything underneath was in bullet points. So all I had to do, and my rule that I teach recruiters is stand, talk, sell, sit, type, listen, and that was like my mantra because it just helped. And I used to write notes in my notepad because that's kind of what we used to do. And then one day my manager saw me doing admin at 5 for a whole hour whilst people were still making sales calls to people that finished work. I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I can't type and talk because I don't type very fast. So I just write my notes and that helps me remember it. And they're like, yeah, but you're also wasting an hour a day. So then they helped me create that template. So I learned to type faster, had a growth mindset, and then just basically would just stand, talk, sell, sit, type, listen. And that really helped. So I always say to people now, even if you do have an AI note tracker, if you're not typing any notes, if you're not writing anything, my worry is yes, they can get lazy, but equally, you're speaking to hundreds of people every week. Like, how are you really remembering that? Because are you actually going back through the transcript and looking through things? Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like if I type things down and read that on the screen or write it down quickly, just the key things on the candidate qualification, it just allows me to memorize that even better for the next call and stuff.
Yeah, there is a huge risk there actually that you're like, right, that phone call's done, on to the next one. And if you're doing that many calls a day, you're not going to remember the first 3 candidates you spoke to in any great detail. And someone's going to say, you're going to call the client, say, actually, got 4 great candidates, great. What's the salary range that they're all looking for? And you're going to be like, and then you're going to go back through the AI notes. That's as long, really, isn't it? So yeah, I think building in that, if you're going to use AI, be straight on the information it's given you and typing out those bits and maybe still having like that template to say, right, even from this transcript, I still need to pull out my top 5, 6 points that I'm going to have to talk to the client about. I think that's really key.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a second ago about getting salespeople engaged in the CRM and it links in with the KPIs. One of the topics we spoke about before recording is that some companies just don't have KPIs. And I remember I got into the recruitment industry in 2014. And after I left my first role after a few months, I didn't like the sector, I didn't like the business. I went into London to meet a few rec to recs, and a bunch of them were saying, we've got an amazing opportunity with a company in Moorgate. It's fantastic. And they don't have KPIs. And again, like a 20-year-old apprentice, you don't really know what KPIs are. You're like, right, okay, so it's like they don't track anything, so you're not going to get micromanaged. You're like, great, that sounds amazing. And as I said to you during the podcast, I worked for a nursing recruitment agency that had 0 KPIs. We didn't have sales targets, we had nothing. So that after I left that business, Charlie, and I'm interviewing, and they're like, so what were your numbers? I'm like, I'll have to text my manager because we didn't have access to that. We didn't even have a spreadsheet for it. Like, what were your CVs interviews? I mean, we only got interviews for like long-term contracts, but it was a lot of shifts. How many nurses did you have out? Oh, anywhere between 50 and 100 every week. But it varied because obviously, anyway.
Sure,
we just didn't have that. And then when I moved to doing perm recruitment, and on day 1, they went through my psychometrics, they went through my KPIs. I was like, oh my God, KPIs, this is scary. But obviously now I've been in this world for a long time. I'm like, you're fucking mental to not have them. But you said that you were quite passionate about talking about this topic yourself. I'm sure you've kind of gone into businesses that maybe don't, or just potentially looking at incorporating them. But yeah, I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and it's how deep they go as well, I suppose. Like you saying then that you didn't even have a sales target. That's
No.
bizarre. That
Yeah.
like how are you from a that I mean, that's made me feel sick from like a
Tell me about
finance
it.
perspective,
Yeah.
because you're like you remove like even how you would measure someone's success or say whether they were a good fit for the business or not. How are you forecasting? Like, how are you saying this is what we're going to achieve this year? So therefore, this is what we're going to need within the bit. Like, you can't plan anything
I
unless you
know.
have a sales target.
Yeah.
Whether you build your sales target back from what you want to achieve financially or say, this is what we can achieve. There's loads of ways to forecast, sure. You've got to have a sales target.
I know.
If you don't have that, I mean, I don't, what are you doing? Like, how would you know if you were good at what you were doing or not? What
I
happens if you didn't have any
I
runners
don't know.
out?
I don't know. To be honest with you, their whole business model, they hired apprentices, and for the first year, I think the government paid our salary, and it was £600 a month, right?
Right.
So I remember when I first joined in my
Okay.
interview, I said I'd done contract social care recruitment for like 4 months. I'd made a few
Yeah.
placements, but you weren't allowed to speak to hiring managers or whatever. I didn't enjoy it. And they were like, oh, well, here you'll have a list of like matrons and heads of hospitals in the private sector. So you can do all the BD you want and we'll incentivize you to go and meet clients. So I was like, oh, this is great. Because in my weird mind, I thought recruitment was going out and meeting loads of people when largely it's
Of
just sitting in the
course.
same space, just fucking calling
Yeah.
people. And it's quite monotonous. But anyway, but yeah, and then I remember like on week 3 or week 4, like the managing director was just like, right, Charlie, Charles. Again, I've mentioned this before, but there was a Charlie and a Charles building the registered general nurse desk. It was long,
Fun.
but he
Yeah.
pulled us aside and was just like, "How are we getting on?" And I just had in my book like, these are the nurses that I'm working with that are available. These are the companies that I've. And he went, right, the numbers, like what, how many contracts have you, what's going on? I went, I haven't yet. It's like, what do you mean you haven't? Well, and I was like, but there was no expectations on we need you to sign up a hospital per week or we need to get you to this revenue target. The whole thing was you're doing really well. Or oh, this week is not
Yeah.
so
No.
great. What's going on? Oh, I haven't
No.
got enough nurses. Oh, I haven't made enough calls. And it's like, okay, make more, get more nurses, stay late. That's all it was. It was mental. And
Yeah.
then every week
Mad.
the sales director would print off the figures for our nursing desk and we'd just walk around like, and bear in mind the office was like 60 to 100 people, just walk around the temps desk and go, right, Charles, oh, 7 grand, mate, well done. I'm like, I don't know if that's good or not. This is my first proper job in recruitment. I was like, that
Sounds like
sounds
they
good.
didn't know. They didn't know if
Yeah.
it was good or
But
not.
my manager was constantly at 15 to 20 grand a week. I was like, that seems insane. Fair enough. That's great.
Yeah.
And then Emma was always on like 10 grand, 9 grand a week. And then some weeks you're down at 3 grand and they're like, yeah, you could be doing better. And then like one day you come into the office and then there's 2 desks empty by your side. And you're like, why has my desk been moved? They're like, oh, we've got 2 apprentices starting. Right. Okay. I was like, yeah, you're going to manage them. What? Am I being promoted? They're like, no, but we just need you to help manage them. I'm like, what the fuck? It was mad. And that was my first
Yeah.
introduction to recruitment. So when I went off to go and interview elsewhere, and they're like, so what was your sales versus target? Didn't have that. How many interview? Like, what was your KPI? Didn't have that. Like, I
Yeah.
technically mentored some people and stuff, but I didn't get any salary
Sure.
increase. It was just so I can see by
Yeah.
the expression on your
Nothing.
face that
Yeah.
absolutely makes you angry.
Yeah, well, wow, it's just a recipe for disaster. And
Yeah.
like, we're human beings. We need feedback. We want to know what success looks like. And there's varying levels of that, in any recruitment agency. You've got your top billers, you've got people who are maybe just starting out, struggling, getting used to the industry, learning what it's about. You've got your people in the middle who sort of consistently bill at the same value. But everyone knows what success can look like or should.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, terrifying. And if you don't have sales targets, you can't then work back to what the rest of your KPIs should look like. As I'm sure you know, it is a funnel, and it's really important to say, if I want to make this placement, I'm going to have to start by contacting this many
Yeah.
candidates. If I want to bring on 2 new clients this month, I've got to start by reaching out to X amount of businesses. So it's giving people a formula for success. That's all it is. It's sure, okay, it is used to judge performance, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
feedback, but ultimately it is a formula for success. We know as a business that to hit 5 new clients this month, we've had to have contacted at least 150 over the period of the last 2 months, and that's how it like builds through. And I just think if you're not giving people jump off KPIs to say, right, you've got to be making 30 candidate calls a day. Whatever it is, whatever success looks like for your agency, if you're not giving people that starting point, I mean, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand how you could be. And I've seen them be really rigid. I've seen them be really structured to the point where maybe you're penalizing or at least negatively feeding back to top billers who are performing because they haven't done X amount of candidate calls. And you're like, maybe not, but look at their revenue. There's a certain point where those individual metrics are outweighed by what you're performing as in terms of your billings. But to get to that, you've got to have this formula at the beginning. You've got to have those early door KPIs.
Yeah. I always say that, you know, if you've got a like recruiter that's smashing their target and you're then penalizing them because they haven't made enough candidate calls and then can't explain why that is going to impact them in the future, then it's just redundant and then your retention is going to be really, really poor. I remember being I remember being a recruiter and being friends with someone that was an unbelievable key account manager, unbelievable. And he was pulling left, right, and center loads and loads of jobs from this business. And the director would sit there and be like, mate, you're not doing enough business development. And he was like, I am pulling 3-4 jobs for a week from this company. And his rebuttal to that wasn't like, yeah, but you got to hit your KPIs. It was, okay, if that business went bust, if they got acquired, you have nothing else. Your entire house is based off this one pillar, this one business. So it's really crucial that you do some other things as like a safety. And if you're really struggling to resource for them, we've got people in the business that can help you out with that. And obviously some people are like, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. But that's like, I can understand. And if you're hitting target and you're doing deals, and for me as a manager and as someone that's really into like business development, if I'm sat there and I'm looking at your KPIs and going, right, okay, so in the last 2 weeks, you've done a bunch of deals, but the rest of your vacancies are, you know, at latter stages, but you've got no leads. You haven't made any business development like calls or booked any meetings. So I can accurately assess that in 2 to 3 weeks or maybe a couple of months' time, you're probably going to blank unless you do a split deal with someone. And that's when you start seeing people go, yeah, fuck, I didn't actually think about that. And it's like, yeah, because that's why the KPIs are there, especially with the business development aspect, because you can actually foresee what your desk is going to look like in a few months' time if you've not done that activity. It's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway. No, I totally agree. I think, there's penalizing people who are top performers who have it covered. You kind of have to trust that actually, they've not done those individual lower down KPIs, but they're consistently hitting target. You have to use like best judgment when it comes to those sorts of things. But you're absolutely right. If all of your business is from one client, that client drops. You might be a top biller, but you won't be in a few months. So it is important that they understand the journey of those KPIs. But I think if you've set them out, if you've communicated why X amount of calls equals X amount of billings, anyone who is good at what they're doing will maintain that level of activity. And that's what it's about. KPIs are just about activity. They aren't necessarily about the end goal when you're tracking someone early doors on amount of candidate calls a week. But it's about getting the right levels of activity so you start to know what good looks like without having to constantly be told.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just when you're introducing them to newer people in the business, like how you introduce them, it's not you're expected to just make 30 candidate calls. It's explaining why making 30 candidate calls is going to, as you said with the funnel, how that's going to help you do your sales target and, you know, adding leads to the system. Like whenever I do training academies and we talk a lot about short-term and long-term business development, if you're adding leads to the system, like a lot of new people in their first week when they're generating leads, they're like, what's the point here? Because they're not chasing them yet. But it's like if you're adding X amount of leads, then when you're doing you've got your target to do client calls, you've got a list there of people to call. Do you know what I mean? So it all kind of falls in together. Look, I'm conscious of time. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to go through with you, if that's all good.
Absolutely.
One thing I'm fascinated by is the topic that you brought up, which is when to start building out an ops department. So my last business that I worked at was a startup, and when I joined, I'm trying to think, I don't think they had an ops manager. They had like an internal recruiter. They had a finance director. They obviously brought me on as global head of L&D. They had an internal recruiter. Yeah, I mentioned that obviously. and they wanted to scale so aggressively. And I think
Yeah.
they scaled way too aggressively. They went way too training heavy. I did an academy every month for like a whole year.
Okay.
It's mad. But then they got the ops manager in, and yeah, some businesses come to me sometimes and say, when do you think we should get an ops manager? And I just put my hands
Yeah.
up and go, not my expertise, if I'm honest. So it'd be interesting for me personally to learn from you about that,
Yeah.
and for you to shed some light onto recruitment business owners as to when they should start building out their ops department, really.
Yeah. So, not to give a vague answer, but it is like, how long is a piece of string? And I
Sure.
think the good way of understanding how long that piece of string is where are you now and where do you want to be? And that's a really important thing. So, like, if you're looking to scale aggressively, which I imagine most recruitment companies starting
Yeah.
out, that's what they say they want to do. Um, it's being really clear on, right, currently this is what we look like. We have, let's say, 2 owners and 6 recruiters, two of which are experienced, 4 of which are coming up through the ranks. At what point do we look to bring in things like internal finance, internal HR, operations?
Mm.
It really depends on where you want to get to, because it could be that actually, if you're looking to stay around the 6 to 12 mark, you might never need somebody completely internal, and you
Mm-hmm.
could look for something fractional, or even look to like an outsourced agency
Mm-hmm.
to help support those pieces, especially for things like finance and HR. There's some really great businesses out there that can offer that, like fixed term support for X amount of days a month, and that might be all you need so that you can focus on the new business, training up your team, getting everybody so you can keep
Mm.
bringing new people through the ranks. I think as a blanket rule, once you get to 15 people in a business, stuff starts creaking. There's a lot
Mm.
going on. It's really busy. Quite possibly you've gone from being a founder who does a lot of new business to a founder that now needs to manage a lot. And I think
Mm.
it's when the people management side and the activities of the business start to detract you from what you're best at as a founder, that's when you start to need to consider, right, am I going to be a founder that manages this business and I'm going to do some of the ops stuff myself? Or am I going to be a founder that leads by example, carries on doing new business, and I'm going to bring someone in to support that? It's usually the latter. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you hit 15 heads, I think that's when it's a good time, and you're quite probably justifying having somebody in-house at that point, because of you've got another
Mm-hmm.
14 people billing that you can look to bring that in.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think some companies that don't have anything internal and get to like 15 heads, especially marketing as well. I think marketing's so like I can't remember who it was. I had someone on the podcast last week. I think it was a guy called Sam, who by the time this episode comes out, it will be either the last episode or whatever. But he was saying that sales and
Yeah.
marketing are like very interlinked. And the last
Yeah.
business I was at, as much as I loved our marketing manager, we used to talk all the time. She was off site. She worked up north, so she wasn't
Yeah.
really involved. She wasn't listening into consultants on the phone and getting market insight
Mm.
and all the rest of it. And I think that's one of the things for me that is like super important to have that person in house. When it comes to L&D, I get asked this question sometimes, obviously because that's my ballpark.
Sure.
I don't know. I found that when we started to scale down in my last business, sometimes when there was only like 5 or 6 consultants in the office and it was me and my L&D consultant, I found myself like twiddling my thumbs, just like, well, I'm not your sales manager. We've done a coaching session
Yeah.
this morning with everyone. I'm like, do you need someone in house like for L&D? Like when would you say like
Yeah.
when you're advising a business when they should get like an in-house L&D person?
Again, I think it needs to probably be even bigger. You're probably looking at 20 people.
Minimum, yeah.
I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of great L&D support you can pull into a business without needing someone full time. That is a big expense. Same with like full-time operations or
Mm,
full-time finance director. These aren't cheap salaries, and that's
mm,
where it's actually looking for those either fractional people or agencies that offer that X amount of days, or come and do some project work, get things firing, allows you to go again without having that continual expense. I think having a full-time L&D person in the business, yeah, I think you've got to have enough people to warrant continually training them.
Yeah.
Like, you can't keep training the same people. You need them back on the phones, you need them back like active. So at that point, it's almost like a carousel of, right, I'm training these people this week, I'm training these people this week, we've got this program running this week. To warrant that, you've got to have at least 20 people, surely.
Yeah, no, 100%. I just found it like, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I am, like being in the same office all day every day. Like after a while I was just like, I need to be out, I need to be about. Like part of being a recruitment consultant that I loved was going to Amsterdam to meet my clients, going to Barcelona for an
Yeah,
exhibition, do you know what I mean? And just being in the same office every single day, I was like, right. And then when you've done the continuous coaching with that person every single day for a month, and then you're just like, I feel like I've added so much value, but I've
yeah,
almost hit a bit of a brick wall now. So yeah,
yeah,
I always say to people, like, if you have plans, like I met with a business recently that wants to hire an academy once a quarter. They have an entire
yeah,
sales floor that is vacant right now that they want to build out.
great.
Maybe you could look at someone in house if or maybe once you get there. But
Yeah,
looking at someone external, although it's expensive to get someone like you or I to come in fractionally or for a set amount of time. But
sure.
the beauty of it is that once you're finished with that, then you're done. Like you don't have to
Yeah,
go through any HR policy of like, I'm sorry, goodbye type thing.
absolutely. Well, it links back into the start of our conversation where it's like, are you going to just build out overheads for overhead's sake in your business, just assuming you're going to continuously grow? Actually, you don't want to sign up to an expensive system for 24 months. You don't want to necessarily sign
Yeah.
up to an expensive headcount for who knows how long. If actually, yeah, you can just make those short-term investments, pull someone in, get the knowledge, the information, the structure in your business, a nice injection of it,
Mm.
and then you can keep doing that again until you've hit a stable position that you can then warrant having someone in the business. I think we've talked about it in a headcount terminology. Obviously, it does also come down to profit.
Sure.
And because you could have 20 people in the business, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're profitable. Are you then going to still invest however much a year in a full-time ops director,
Mm.
L&D, head of L&D?
Mm.
No. So you have to be really sure about your stability as a business and then the continued scale of the business to warrant these people coming in, for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. Last thing then, before I move on to my final question, Charlie. One topic that we
Yeah.
haven't really properly attacked yet, but companies relying on a 360 model. As I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier on, a lot of companies I speak to now are either pivoting to the 180 model or are quite curious about how that would work, and rightly so.
Yeah.
They've got some objections around or some fears, sorry, around going to the 180 model with how turbulent a lot of recruitment markets are, etc. But
Mm.
tell me a little bit about why that's something you were quite keen to talk about.
Yeah, I think the agencies that I've worked in and with have always had that as a model.
Hmm.
And I think it offers a few different things. One, really clear skill sets. You've got
Hmm.
people doing very clear, distinguished jobs, which I think that's probably my finance and ops brain I love.
Yeah.
I think when it's really clear who can play to their strengths, really clear on a training progression for that person.
Hmm.
Um, I just think it works well. You can communicate the role clearly. We've talked about KPIs.
Hmm.
That there's a lot of different KPIs for a 360 role. Actually, it's much clearer if you're doing 180. I just find it, yeah, allows for a better line of progression for people coming through into the business. I think as well, there's a lot to take on. If you're hitting the ground running as a 360 consultant, that's so much to learn. Depending on if you're hiring grads or
Mm.
experienced people, it's a lot to take on and it's a lot to train and teach
Yeah.
somebody. And I think they're quite different skill sets. I think I know people that have just always done resourcing, always done that candidate side of the
Mm.
business, and are really good at it. Have really great conversations, great at finding people, really good at nailing down skill set, great at communicating what a job, a job spec is, why they should look to apply for this role, why they'd be great at it. That's a really different conversation to reaching out to a new business and saying, this is why you should be using us to place your candidates. This is what
Yeah.
I think one can lean into the other. Once someone's achieved well as a resourcer, they could probably be trained up really well and apply a lot of that skill set to being the consultant. I just think the two link nicely. but I do believe it is probably a luxury in the market.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I mentioned, the number one objection that I get when I say to people, maybe consider a 180 model is, what about if the market flips on its arse and then we are really struggling to get new business? Then what did the delivery team do? And
Yeah,
my response to that is, maybe we need to get away from the thinking that a delivery consultant's sole purpose is to just resource for jobs, because that for me is where the issues will suffice, right? You need
okay.
your delivery team to look at generating commercial and strategic information to support the sales or business development function. That's my opinion. And I said this to a business. I even created a business plan for them. And a lot of my clients now are running with that, where the delivery team, yeah, sure, they've got roles to resource for, but their whole morning is essentially like lead generation, CV stripping, and building out short lists of profiles for the sales team to take to market and giving them market insights. So imagine if you were the business developer and I was just speaking to candidates all morning. And then just after lunch, I come back to you and you say, "How was your morning, Charles?" And I go, "Right, I've got this candidate, Joe Bloggs. He's got 10 years experience in the SaaS market or whatever market it is. This is the companies he wants to work with. Here are the companies he's interviewed at. Here are the companies he doesn't want to work with. Also, the last three companies are all within SaaS, again, using as a hypothetical. Here's the
Yeah,
hiring managers for his last three businesses that he said he's happy for us to go and get references for." If I was the salesperson, my delivery consultant done that in the morning,
you'd
I
be
would be like,
loving it.
"Oh my God,
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
insane." That's like my first few
yeah,
hours of the morning. I've got three references to call that I can flip into business development calls, a bunch of new
yeah,
clients to go and approach. So that's how it works in synergy. But if we have the
yeah.
mindset that these delivery consultants are simply just resourcing for roles with the blinkers on, then of course you're going to fall into problems.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's really key, actually, the connection between the two. And actually, when you like structure it like that, that delivery consultant is probably going to make a fantastic recruiter in
Yeah,
time because they know what the recruiter needs, they know what they're looking for. Yeah, I think the connection between those two is really key. And they're just it gives that scope for someone to really focus on understanding the candidate side of recruitment. And I think that that piece gets let down somewhat
Mm,
sometimes in the industry. We've all had the LinkedIn messages from that someone has automated that has
yeah,
absolutely no relevance, that has my surname in, not my first name. That's a sign of shit resourcing. That's a sign of the delivery consultant model that you're saying doesn't work, is pointless, will cost you lots
yeah.
of money, and as the markets get tough, you don't want. But yeah, your version of actually the two working in synergy, the delivery consultant understanding that actually if I can put these six great candidates in front of a consultant, this is going to give them potential new business. Actually, great candidates are just cold outreach to some really cool new companies. Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good model.
I thought this might make you laugh. I don't know if you saw the post that I done yesterday. Um, Talk about AI gone wrong or terrible automation or maybe just spam, right? Someone
Yeah.
messaged me saying, and I think this would be funny for the listeners as well. "Hey, Haley, not 100% sure if you're the right person to ask. AI dash. Just wanted to check
Great.
something real quick." So I replied 5 minutes later, "Haley,
Yeah.
question mark."
Yeah.
They then replied, "I just wanted to see if you'd be open to a partnership. I could help you turn your existing email list into $20,000 to $50,000 per month with zero spend on rev sharing basis. Dot dot dot. Would you be interested? Question mark. Are you free to speak this time? Question mark. Might be interesting for you? Question mark. I immediately blocked them.
Yeah. Awful. I mean, just like this is like this is the bit we've not talked about with everything we've said about use AI, outreach is great. All of these things are just like, hi Haley, and then you're like, oh, okay, maybe AI isn't, maybe we shouldn't be scared of it. Let's not be terrified just yet. It's not going to take our jobs. I think I reckon I get two or three of those a week. I get Mr. Hunt quite a lot. Hello, Mr. Hunt.
Mr.
And you're like,
Hunt.
yeah, yeah, wow, Charlie Hunt. I get hello, Mr. Hunt so often. And you're like, oh, come on. And just like referencing my profile, like a job I've never done. You're like, I don't know where this has come from. I'm not sure. I really hope you're using a free tool because if you're paying for whatever has created this content, you're in trouble, my
Mate,
friend. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
referencing the podcast I done last week, we were talking a little bit about AI automation because I've started to use like a LinkedIn automation thing called Canbox, which basically
Yeah,
just allows me to add lots of people and then send a quick follow-up message, which is like good to
yeah,
connect with you, anything I can help
right.
with. Um,
Yeah.
Part of that though, which is quite scary, is you can reference a recent post into a message and
Yeah.
automate it. And Sam, who came on the podcast last week, said that
I've
he
had one of these.
yeah, I would like to hear about that in a second. He said
Yeah.
to me that someone had this message, but their recent post was about their dad passing away. So I shouldn't laugh.
Uh,
It's dark. But imagine messaging someone and being
I
like, "Hey, Charlie,
can't.
was just looking through your profile. Really liked your last post about your dad dying. Was keen to discuss further." Could you fucking imagine?
Oh, that's made me feel really
I
anxious.
know.
That's given me really bad secondhand anxiety. Like, gone are the days, like, I've been in the working world since I was 18, I'm 36. So, gone are the days where I've sent a few emails and hit send and it's gone to the wrong person and I've hidden under my desk for 10 minutes because I've been like, that couldn't
Yeah,
have gone to a worse person.
yeah,
That's so much worse. Like AI literally ruining your day because you
yeah.
just haven't thought about actually. LinkedIn is now a place where people are really open personally. That's actually
Mm,
one of the things. I was listening to something the other day. LinkedIn is the fastest growing form of social media
mm,
because lots of people now have to be verified. It's more authentic than anywhere else. It links like your name, your job, your
hmm.
location, where you can get away with being a troll somewhere else. You absolutely can't on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Like understand the authenticity of content there. Don't just use a tool that
yeah,
says referencing when your dad died in your last post. Like, oh God,
yeah. Could you imagine?
fun. Or just like, yeah, absolutely not. I definitely get messaged from those recently. I've definitely had a few because it's almost you're like, oh, this person might no, okay. Like
Yeah,
the opening of the message, you're like, oh, okay, maybe they have had a look at my no, they haven't. It's
yeah.
just like this is just like, yeah, filler.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Because I remember when in my last business, I first got introduced to Sourcewell, which is the email automation tool, etc.
Yeah,
And I done the training with them, and I was training people how to create like really good email marketing campaigns for candidates and clients. But now, because of like AI automation, like what you just said there is perfect. So many companies now are reading these emails, and it's like, "Hey, Charles, see that you set your business up a year and a half ago." It's like, did they look through my profile, or is that just the automation? So I saw your recent post about that person,
yeah,
found it quite funny.
yeah,
Did they actually look at my profile? Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm trying to
yeah,
explain to recruiters now that how do you differentiate yourself in all this noise? Well, I know there are some sales like AI chatbots now that call prospects up and stuff, but if you call someone and actually just show that you're actually human, immediately
yeah.
you're differentiated.
And yeah, maybe we're having like a conversation of contrast because we've talked a lot about like actually you're gonna need to use AI. You're stupid
Mm,
if you're not using it to save time. But also, if you're not just actually being a human as well, you are gonna lose out. And that
yeah,
is the differentiator as well. Like if we're both talking about getting not we'll call it spam, a bit spammed by AI, or a bit, people utilize overutilization of
yeah,
it. That's the problem. Again, we've already said this, use it as the jump off point, use it to make your day faster, more efficient, but be a human being. Like
yes,
it will pay dividends. If I
yes.
get a genuine message, which, I do get, hi, I listened to this, you're on it, it was really cool, I'd love to connect. You're like, oh, great, okay, this is really nice. It feels good. I'm now engaged with that person. As soon as I get a Mr. Hunt, I'm like, delete. I'm not interested.
Of course. Last thing before I wrap up, so I thought this might make you laugh. I got a somewhat personalized message on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
they it was like quite casual the way they wrote it, and they said like, might sound crazy. Hang on, I'll send you a voice note. So immediately I was like, oh, all right, cool. I'll listen to a voice note.
Okay.
Sure, like this is definitely
Yeah.
human. Voice note started. Hey Charles, I said that in my message. This might sound a bit crazy, but hear me out at INF One Eye Learning. And I went, wait, pause. Sorry, because my business Infinite Learning has got a one in there to match up with the 1% better. And I went, I restarted it at INF One Eye Learning. I went, oh, you fucking dickhead. You've used AI to voice note. Are you fucking kidding me?
No way.
Are you
That's so
joking?
mad.
So I just replied and said, mate, sometimes AI just ain't it, dot, dot, dot. And he went, are your clients not utilizing AI? And I went, yeah, not like that. And he went, not like what? And I went, you've just automated a voice note, the one thing that would differentiate yourself, that would make me want to have a call with you. And I was like, in my opinion, and a lot of people share this opinion, that's lazy. It's like that was a 22-second voice note that you could have done after your automation. You could have simply just went, hey, Charles, I know this might sound crazy, but at Infinite Learning, are you doing X, Y, and Z? Do you fancy booking a call? I'd have been like, sure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's
mental.
mad. An AI voice note, great.
I know.
Really good. I mean, when these people aren't hitting targets, they might have to question their approach a little. Do you think it works? Do you think that would have worked on someone?
Maybe. I mean, I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, and there was this one woman that got scammed by an AI, Keanu Reeves, and he was voice noting her on Snapchat, saying that he's going through some finance issues, so he needed X amount in Bitcoin. And then they played it on the news in America, and it sounded like him, but obviously you could tell it was AI. But the lady was like in her 60s. She was like really lonely. She was playing words with friends. I don't know if you can send. I'll find the story and send it to you. It's hilarious. It is so funny. But it literally sounds like Keanu Reeves saying, I'm going through some financial struggles. I need you to send me like $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. So I thought, what?
And she did.
People do fall for it. Yeah, she lost all her savings.
Oh,
it's really sad.
It's really sad,
it's really
isn't
sad.
it? Yeah. I mean, I touch wood, I never get scammed by AI, but I feel like I would know.
I'm the same. Like, I mean, but the thing is as well, like like I said, with my business name, because it's got a 1 in there, because it's all in capitals, right? It's just, it can kind of, I can suss out when I get the AI messages. But the thing that really pisses me off at the minute is the blatant automation. Like, because I've got like an automated thing that's only a couple of steps, which is that good to connect with you. Anything I can help with. A few days later, hey, we've been connected for a few days now. I've got a load of materials that I send out to recruiters and recruitment business owners. How open would you be to seeing it? It's not spammy. It's just a couple of things. And then some businesses say, yeah, sure, why not? What have you got? We struggle with leads. Send me something about that. And then it just starts a conversation, and the rest of it's like human. But honestly, like, I've got so many. Did you see the last email? Like that. Here's a link to my website. Like loads of information. I'm like, fuck off. Go away. It's annoying.
Regularly get that every day, and completely irrelevant to what I do. That's my favorite bit. I think because I'm a consultant working within different sectors, there's an assumption that it's like, hi, this is for you, and you're like, in no way do you know what I do. No, delete. Absolutely not.
And it just stops any trust, that it's like, you're never going to work with that person. Like, once you've ruined that trust, I'm never working with you. So cool. All right, totally, Charlie, I've really enjoyed this episode. We've had a lot of laughs, we've learned loads. It's been awesome, and I'm sure that loads of people have taken a shed load of value from this. But as you know, the last question I finish off every episode with is, following today's episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Yeah, I think let's end with, what we've just been talking about. And I think it's just remaining human with AI. Like, utilize it, create that efficiency, but be human. And I think that has to apply for the whole business. Like, don't try and cut too many corners, build steadily, ensure that you're utilizing what you've got around you, and just be human within it.
Wicked. I think that might be the title of the episode. Has AI gone crazy in recruitment?
Yes, Hayley. It has, Hayley.
Hayley, fuck's sake. I'm going to do my intro. Just gonna call you, It's Hayley from the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast.
Yeah, that's it. I'm going to start commenting. I'm going to start trolling you on LinkedIn. Just being like, great post, Hayley. Great post, Hayley. Loved it.
All right, Charlie. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. In terms of how people can reach out to you and what types of people when they listen to this, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Obviously, Charlie Hunt. And I work with businesses that are growing. So if you're in a state of flux, looking to scale, working out when you should bring in some ops, bring in some finance, or even just want to chat about whether what you've got is currently working, then feel free to hit me up.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all your details below the podcast. And for people that have made it this far in the episode, thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, what the hell are you doing? Yada, yada, yada. And I'll see you next week. thank you so much for watching this episode or listening to this episode, guys. Let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from this week's guest? What did you think about their answer to the 1% Better in Recruitment? I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, please drop us a like if you're on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really, really keen to get some feedback from you all on what you think about the format of these episodes. Are there any other guests that you think we should have on the show? Are you someone that wants to be a guest on the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast? Because if so, you can just simply DM me on LinkedIn, you can drop me an email, all my details are below on these videos. And I'm always interested in having absolute legends come on the show that want to have real open conversation, that want to talk about things that could even be potentially controversial. We could debate certain things, but the whole point, as I mentioned at the start of the video, guys, is that my whole purpose with this show is to help the recruitment industry get 1% better after every episode. So make sure you're following, subscribing on all the different platforms, and I'll see you next week.